The morning of September 11, 2001 began like any other ordinary day in the United States. The sky over New York was strangely clear and blue, the early autumn sunlight gleaming off glass towers as if the whole city were coated in a layer of silver. Sidewalk coffee stands opened early, yellow taxi horns blared non-stop, children skipped to school, and adults hurried off to begin another workday. No one among them, these ordinary people, their faces blending into the sea of commuters, knew that their lives, and the world itself, were only minutes away from entering a different era. On the upper floors of the North Tower of the World Trade Center, many employees had already arrived. Some were preparing for important meetings. Others phoned home to remind their spouses and children of small daily things, while a few stood by the windows looking down at Manhattan, thinking about their modest plans for the day. Offices of technicians, stockbrokers, financial analysts, building maintenance crews, all operated in their usual rhythm. No one knew that thousands of meters above them, a commercial aircraft was quietly drifting off course, leaving its programmed path and heading toward the city at a speed explainable only by tragedy. In Boston, hours earlier, passengers on American Airlines Flight 11 boarded with ordinary round-trip tickets. Just like on any other day, the security announcements at airports were still relatively simple at the time. Everyone believed America's skies were the safest in the world. No one noticed anything strange. No one imagined that evil intentions were being carried into the cabin. Everything was so normal that it is hard to believe that within minutes, that airplane would become a weapon. At 8 a.m., the pilots checked their cockpit panels, ready for a routine flight with nothing out of the ordinary. But a few minutes after takeoff, the cockpit door was breached. Screams erupted, warning lights flashed, radio contact was lost. The FAA began noticing irregularities, but no one could imagine the worst-case scenario. 8:46 a.m. In New York, people only had time to hear a roaring scream tearing through the peaceful morning air. Some maintenance workers in the North Tower glanced at each other. The sound was not like that of a typical airplane. On the streets, pedestrians stopped and looked upward, searching for the source. A firefighter would later recall that moment forever. I looked up and saw it pass right over me. So close I could see the windows. Then everything exploded. Fire erupted from the 93rd floor of the North Tower. A massive fireball burst through the windows, hurling steel panels and office supplies into the air. The entire city shook. Thick black smoke billowed upward. Debris rained down onto the streets. People on the ground scattered in panic. Others stood frozen in shock. No one understood what had happened. Some assumed it was an accident, an airliner crashing into a skyscraper. A horrific accident, but still an accident. Early news broadcasts reported it that way. But the frightening part was this: the world had no time to make sense of the situation before history delivered its second blow. Inside the North Tower, chaos consumed everything. Hallways were filled with smoke. Floors tilted from the impact. Many people were trapped above the crash site, with no way out. Firefighters, police officers, and emergency responders rushed inside, climbing dark stairwells trying to reach the upper floors. They didn't know they were climbing into a massive trap of fire and steel. But they climbed, because that was their duty, and because lives depended on them. 9 minutes later, the world witnessed something no one had imagined, something that turned an accident into a symbol of catastrophe. 9:03 a.m. United Airlines Flight 175 slammed into the South Tower. America was horrified. Reporters were speechless, stammering, "Oh my God, it's another plane." Viewers around the globe stood in shock, some dropping their coffee cups, rising to their feet in disbelief. This was no accident. This could not be an accident. It was an attack. New York spiraled into deeper chaos. Crowds screamed, elderly people sobbed, office workers fled as if the ground were collapsing beneath them. Police erected barricades, ambulances wailed, emergency radios crackled with urgency. A rescue chief remembered a firefighter's voice, "Floor 78. We found survivors. We're moving up. We'll get them out." Few of them realized they were walking straight into death. On the floors above the crash in the South Tower, many were trapped with no escape. Flames spread rapidly. Thick black smoke swallowed the corridors. Cries, shouts, prayers, all blended into a scene no human should ever witness. Some people were forced into the most desperate decision, climbing out the windows. Small figures stood on the window ledges, backs pressed against the walls, smoke spilling behind them. Some waved white cloths for help. Some made their final calls home, voices trembling yet trying to stay calm so their loved ones wouldn't panic. Then some jumped. The falling people, the most haunting images of 9/11. They did not jump to die. They jumped to escape fire, to avoid suffocation, to avoid being burned alive, to make their final seconds less painful. Their bodies fell in merciless silence. People on the streets cried out in horror as they witnessed it. Many turned away because they could not bear it. One witness said he heard the sound of bodies hitting the ground, a sound he never forgot, no matter how hard he tried. 9:37 a.m. Washington, D.C. The terror reached the Capitol. American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon, tearing open part of the world's largest military building. Flames erupted, smoke spiraled upward. Military analysts, officers, and guards fled, while others rushed in to rescue the injured. News networks around the world repeated, "America is under attack." 9:42 a.m. The FAA issued an unprecedented order: shut down all U.S. airspace. More than 4,000 aircraft had to land immediately. The busiest skies in the world suddenly became silent. 9:59 a.m. A thunderous roar, then a massive cloud of dust. The South Tower, 110 stories tall, a symbol of American economic pride, began to collapse. Not tilting, not losing a section, but falling straight down, floor upon floor, steel snapping like paper. In just 10 seconds, an immense structure turned into ash and rubble. Firefighters still climbing the stairs felt the tower tremble. Some heard the groaning of steel like a scream. Some tried calling their teams, pull out, but it was too late. Dust clouds like a tsunami swept across Manhattan's streets. People ran in terror. Faces were coated in gray, eyes bloodshot, mouths coughing uncontrollably. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Only screams, alarms, and crashing metal filled the air. 10:03 a.m. Shanksville, Pennsylvania. United Airlines Flight 93, the final plane, crashed into an empty field. But it did not hit a building. It did not strike the Capitol. It did not trigger another urban disaster. Because the passengers fought back, they called their families, learned that other planes had been hijacked. They knew they were facing death, and they chose not to let it happen quietly. One of them, Todd Beamer, spoke the final rallying words, "Let's roll." They saved countless lives on the ground at the cost of their own. 10:28 a.m. The North Tower, the last standing, shuddered. Steel columns weakened after absorbing heat for too long. The upper floors sagged, flames dimmed, but the structure had already failed. The building collapsed. Smoke, dust, small explosions from compressed floors, all merged into a collapse that froze the hearts of millions. Firefighters at the base couldn't escape. Rescue leaders lost contact with their teams. Radio calls fell silent one by one. A rescue officer stood amid the ruins, screaming in desperation, "Can anyone hear me? Answer me." But most would never answer again. Manhattan resembled a war zone. Streets once lively were now blanketed with white dust, mixed with steel. Concrete, glass, papers, and fragments of human lives crushed beneath the rubble. Tears, panic, and agony intertwined everywhere. When the dust settled slightly, small figures in red firefighter gear moved among the wreckage. They dug with their hands, shovels, axes, searching for faint taps. A groan, any sign of life. No one gave up. No one would leave their fallen brothers behind. The afternoon and evening of September 11th passed in a surreal haze. Cell networks crashed. People lined up at hospitals waiting for news of loved ones. Missing person flyers covered the walls. America was drowning in shock. Firefighters walked out of the ruins exhausted, faces ghost white from dust, eyes red, but still returning to the scene again and again. The U.S. president addressed the nation. His voice trembled slightly, yet firm. "America has been attacked, but we will rise." The world watched in disbelief. Allies sent condolences. People in many countries lit candles. Paris dimmed the Eiffel Tower. London stood silent for a minute of mourning. Tokyo lowered its flags. Never had the world been so united in grief. For weeks, rescue teams continued to hope for survivors. But the number dwindled to none. They shifted to recovering remains, placing them into bags, labeling them, and returning them to families, so loved ones could at least have a place to mourn. Some families received only a small fragment. The World Trade Center, once Manhattan's pride, became a red Smoking crater of twisted steel, excavators, and bright floodlights, it was called Ground Zero. And 9/11 became the day that changed the world. It changed aviation security. It changed how America viewed the world.